Hey, this is Ralph, and in this video we're going to be working on our class activity for Thursday, although we're not really having a class. Instead, I'm kind of pre-recording the demonstration lecture, and I'll want you to work on that. Now, this is going to be a twofold activity. Part of it, obviously, we're going to work on together as we practice a little bit about CSS grid. And then I'm going to let you loose and to do some more to this web page that we're about to create, and that'll be an extra credit participation. So it's Thursday morning about 9:30, and I will certainly have this done and ready to rock and roll for you by the time we get to midday. So this will be how you participate in the class. Let's see now. Couple things. I already practiced this page that I want to demonstrate with you, and I don't actually have the page with me here because I'm at my home office today, and I did this at school yesterday. But I did make a printout of the page and the code and stuff like that, because when I was first doing this page, it was my intention this would be our in-class demonstration, and I decided we're gonna just do a recorded class. And then I made the video again for the recorded class, and I didn't have my mic settings proper, so I did this whole recording and it didn't take. Basically, I didn't have audio for it, so crap. And that all happened yesterday afternoon, evening. So I'm back at it again. So this will be the third time I've made this page, and I'll have to tell you, I'm getting faster at it, which I guess is a good sign. The more you do something over and over, the faster you will get. So the first time I made this page, maybe took about 90 minutes or so. Second time I made it, spent about 45 minutes. And I'm sure I could do it faster here, but I'm not necessarily going to go faster because I want to pause at a couple sections and make sure you're keeping up and to address some little nuances. So without giving you a picture of the finished page, I've got my picture here, but it's going to be a little bit tough to see. We're going to be making what's called a one-page website. And one of your classmates brought this up, I don't know, maybe 2 or even 3 weeks ago, where we have a web page. I know this is just a kind of a bad impression of it there, but at the top of the page, we're going to have a horizontal navigation menu. And basically what's going to happen is when the user clicks on one of those navigation buttons, the page will scroll to that particular section of the website. So, one-page website, and with 4 distinct sections on it. They aren't super popular. They had their day a few years back when mobile web pages were really developing, and it was an easy way, or an easier way, let's say, to make a website that rendered well for our phone devices. Because if it's a one-page website, it will load inherently faster when users click on those other pages. And you might still see examples of this, but there could be a project that you're working on where a one-page website might be a good solution. I do have a couple problems with it. It does, a one-page website would be more challenging for search engine optimization. So I don't think it has a real good practical application for a small business, but for a class project or for personal website, yeah, it could be quite fine. So we're going to have we'll have a heading up here at the top, and basically the theme of our web page is going to be comparing CSS Grid, Flexbox, and tables. So 3 things. I'm going to do one of them with you, and you're going to do the other 2 on your own if you'd like for extra credit. But the key participation, the key activity is going to be making the grid layout together. And then for extra credit, you can do the Flexbox version and web table version. So we'll have a navigation menu right across the top. And then on the main home screen, or the home section, I guess I should probably say, it'll just be like a little welcome message. I'll probably pause my recorder then, and I'll just put down the what I'm expecting for the extra credit part. And then we'll have a button for a grid, and one for Flexbox, and one for table, and those will go to different sections. Now, what we're going to end up creating is going to be a calculator interface. And this will give us an opportunity to do some different size rectangles and buttons with some very minimal content. And The guide I used when I was making the page the first time was I just opened up the calculator on my tablet and I just had it off to the side on my computer, on my desk, and I just, kind of made a version of that. So let's go ahead and get to it. Now I've already got an HTML page set up here. I've called it grid versus table, but I really should say grid versus flexbox versus table, even though my web page file name I just have grid versus table. Okay, I am definitely going to be using an external style sheet here today, so let me go ahead and make that. Control S, and this is going to go into my styles folder, and I will call it M8 underscore grid versus table.css. And I'm going to go ahead and start off with margin 0, padding 0, border 0, and I'll go ahead and do box sizing, border box, using my M and abbreviations there. Take care of that. I'm going to jump right into the body of the page. I'm going to set the background color to #EEC and my font family to Verdana. Now I'm not seeing a change on my page, which I have open yet, because I haven't made my link tag yet, so I do need to take care of that, but let me put that in there. And the color of my body text, I'll just do #234. It seems reasonable, and I think we're good for now. So let me jump back over to the HTML file and put in a link reference. Link relation style sheet hyperreference goes to my styles folder /M8 underscore, there it is, grid versus table. And I can see my tan coming through. Perfect. Okay, let's head on. Actually, we'll stay in the HTML for a moment and put in a little bit of content on here. I'm going to create a header section first, and my header is going to contain my heading 1, which is going to be grid versus flexbox versus table. There we go. And I'm also going to include my nav in here. And I can see my calendar stuff popping up. So we're going to do a nav, but we are going to do nav in a slightly different way. So our class activity today is not going to be just grid. There's a couple of little things that I want to show you. For instance, the navigation menu we do today is going to be created using an unordered list, which is the more professional, more popular way to create nav menus on websites using an unordered list. And I want us to warm up to that because plan of action for next week, which happens to be Thanksgiving week, by the way, we are going to have class on Tuesday of Thanksgiving week, but there's not like really an official topic. So my plan of action is we're going to figure out how to do a drop-down navigation menu using unordered list. And I think we'll also have an extra credit participation activity there too. So there's still an official participation activity, which is you making a table, a printable table this week. There's the extra credit participation, which is this class right now, where we're going to work on part of it together, and then you're going to finish up the Flexbox and table version on your own. And then next week, we will also have a participation activity where we do I can't remember if we have something official on the books, but we'll do whatever the official thing is, but we'll also have some extra credit component, which you can do as well. So then we'll have all that, and then we'll take a few days off for holiday and come back and finish up our term. Okay, so within my nav here, I'm going to go ahead and create an unordered list, and I'm going to do a list item with an anchor tag, hyperreference equals, but I'm not going to just do a dummy hashtag here. Instead, I'm going to write hashtag, and then I'll just type in welcome. So basically, we're going to end up, and for the in between the opening and closing anchor tags, I'll just put home. So with this one-page website, we're going to create a navigation menu that links to a different part of the very same website. And this is how you do it. You do a hashtag with some name you've given something, and then later on in our web page, for instance, I'll use an article here. I'll have an article with ID equals welcome, and in there I'll put a headline 2, and I can put in, let's see, we've already got an H1 for our name, so I'll put in I'll just write welcome again, and I'll put in the rules for the extra credit on here in a little bit, but that'll be kind of some information on there. So basically, when somebody clicks on the home button, it's going to display this. Of course, it's going to display that by default, but if somebody clicks on one of the other sections. So let's kind of think about how these other sections might look. I'm going to go ahead and take this one existing list item with the anchor tag. I'll just copy and paste that several times. So for instance, one of our options is going to be CSS grid. We're going to have that. Actually, I think I'll just do these all in lowercase, very simple. I'll just do grid, and then we're going to do flexbox, and then we'll have table. And then the hyper references are going to go to, like, we're going to have an example, so I'll do ex underscore grid. And our flexbox will have example ex underscore flex, and the table ex underscore table. So these hyperlinks will be able to refer to these. Now, by the way, my web page obviously looks very confused over here, so let me just refresh that and we'll see it's looking a little bit better. And there's my basic navigation menu. We are going to have to do some styling to it for sure. So, okay, that kind of makes sense. And kind of help out here too, I'm going to go ahead and take this article, copy, paste it, and we'll have an article here with ID example underscore grid, and this will be our CSS grid. And I'm going to go ahead and copy this, paste that a couple times, and so we're going to have our example flex and our example table, and then the headline 2s will be a little bit more specific to these items. I'll write CSS flexbox, and then of course our last one, our table, isn't really technically a CSS thing, although you would certainly use CSS, but we would generally refer to this as a HTML or / a web table. So we're going to have these sections, and I want to rig it so that we only see one of these 4 sections at a time for sure. So we'll only see one of them, which means we're going to space them out really far with some height or min height or something like that. And then our navigation menu will go to these various sections. So we're getting the structure of the page down pretty well, I believe. So let's head back over to CSS, and I'm going to do a little bit of styling from top to bottom, just a little bit, and then I want to come back and spend a little bit more time on this navigation menu. I'm going to use grid to also organize this navigation menu. So let's see, we've got the body of our page is fine for now. Let's see, I'm going to take this header section. Now my intention is for the header to be kind of integrated looking into our web page, but for now I do want you to be able to see exactly what we're working on. So for the short term, I'm going to give this header a background color, and I'll just do bright white, and there we go, and we'll be able to see that header clearly at the top of the page. Now when the page scrolls up and down, I want the header to stay fixed and always visible. So I'm going to do, actually before I do any of that, let me just go ahead and set the height. And I'm going to set the height to be 140 pixels. I think that'll be sufficient. Yeah, we'll give that a try first. And then I'm going to do position fixed. And I'm going to position it 0 from the top and 0 from the left. Now when you position absolute or position fixed, that element, even though it's a block element, it's going to shrink down to fit the content. Now I don't want that to happen here, so I am going to set the width of my header to be 100% and basically put it back so it's taking up all that space. And I can't scroll my page up and down right now because I don't have enough content, but definitely this is going to be a fixed header. Now you might notice, hey, what happened to your headings? You know, all those heading 2s we had, like welcome and grid and flexbox and web table, they're still there, but they're tucked up underneath this header. So if that header was not quite up there, let's say it was 300 pixels from the top, you would see those headings right there. They're just hidden behind that header right now. I'm going to put this back over to 0. So I do want to be able to see those messages though. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to move down to the articles real quick. And for my articles, in the short term, so we can kind of see what's going on, I'm going to give these articles a border 4 pixels solid and red so we can really see them. And we still can't really see them very well, but they're there. I'm also going to give them a min height of 100 SVHs. So now each article is going to take up 100% of the viewport height. Now I can really see them. There's all the way at the bottom, there's my web table, there's my flex box. Scrolling up, there's my grid, and there's my welcome. You can't really see welcome because it's still up there. I want to make sure that the headings, the content of each of these articles clears my fixed header. Now my fixed header is 140 pixels tall. So if I go to my articles and I give them a padding top of, let's say, 160 pixels, that means I'm going to be able to see all of those messages. So if I scroll and I get to where my CSS grid is taking up the space, I'll still be able to see those heading 2s. Now you might be thinking, yeah, but the borders look a little funky because they're kind of cut off. The borders were only there for temporary purposes, and I am going to be getting rid of those borders. So just ignore the borders for now because they're not going to be there when we're all done. Let's see, I will take these articles and I'm going to just add, we got padding top. I'm going to do 8 pixels right, 8 pixels bottom, 8 pixels left, increase that a little bit. Now I also want these, I don't want them to be super wide, so I am going to put a max width on my articles of 750 pixels. So even on a tablet, they'll still fit there. And you know what? I'm going to give them a margin 0 top and bottom. Actually, no, will I do that? I'm going to do 0 top, auto right, 16 pixels bottom, auto left. So that way my articles will be centered in there, but I'll be able to see these. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, this navigation menu actually does work now. So if I click on home, I'll be at the home one. You know what? I've lost my padding. How come my padding, I can't see. Well, let's see. If I go to grid and flexbox, none of that's working. What did I screw up here? Did I screw up my margin top? Because basically, things don't seem quite right. You know what? I wonder if yeah, so let's see what I've got going on. I'm pretty happy with the centering, but you notice when I'm displaying a particular section like this, I can still see my border, but it doesn't look like I can truly see the very top. Part of my heading 2 is still underneath that header, so I need to scroll up and I see it. And you can notice here, oh, you probably, yeah, see, this is the problem of having a recorded class instead of a live class. You're probably yelling at me, Ralph, you left it as padding top. Since I'm doing all 4 sides, I need to change that to padding. So there we go. And now I can click on home and I'll see the welcome. I can click on grid. I can see grid. I can see, click on flexbox. I'll see my flexbox section and table, and there we go. Now, a cool effect, which I haven't done in class before, but it's very easy to do. Check this out. We can create a rule for HTML, and we can put in scroll behavior smooth. And this is pretty neat. Check this out. Now, when I click on Flexbox in my menu, you'll see that scrolling up to the Flexbox section, or to table, and back to grid, and back to Flexbox, and back to home. So it's kind of a cool looking effect, I think. Obviously, it's not essential, it's just aesthetics, but it can look kind of neat. So yeah, give that a try. So basically, you create a rule for HTML, scroll behavior smooth. Now, I don't know, can I do this with colon root? I don't know if I've tried that. Let's see. Does it still work? It does still work. So I think in previous classes I mentioned you can do colon root, like if we're doing setting up for rems, root ems, or if we wanted to create CSS variables, we would do that, and you could use HTML instead, but it looks like it's working even with :root on there. But remember, it can be :root or HTML, whichever one you prefer. All right, I'm feeling pretty good about this. So now we're kind of creating our one-page section here. All right, feeling pretty good about that. I want to improve the look of my navigation menu. So let's see, just as a reminder, my nav menu is right up here at the top in my header, and it's an unordered list. So I'm going to head over to the CSS, and I'll just work, I guess I'll work right in here after the header before the article. So let's see, we've got header, nav, and I don't know if I'm doing anything to this. So I guess it's not too critical. I could put something like a border, 1 pixel, solid black. That's fine. Just temporarily, just so we can see, okay, there's my nav. But really, if I want to use grid, and I do, I need to look and see what the parent is here. So unordered list is really the parent of the 4 list item children. So the list items are going to be my grid items, and the unordered list is going to be my grid parent. So what I'll do is I'll create a rule here, header, nav, unordered list. And for that one, I'm going to end up doing display grid. Now, you're not really going to be able to appreciate much about what's going on because we can't see the individual list items that well. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get rid of the border on my nav, and I'm going to create a rule here, header, nav, list items, and I'm going to put a border on them, 1 pixel, solid black. So we're going to be able to see those 4 list items very clearly, and they are behaving as list items should. List items are block elements. They're naturally as wide as they can be, and we can see those borders, and they're, you know, 1 on each line. Great. Okay, I'm going to head back to my unordered list. Now that we have display grid, we can do things like a gap of 8 pixels, and that's going to give some space in between those list items. Now, when we do display grid, this is where we can also establish the structure of this thing. So I could do something like grid template columns, and this is where we might do something like 1FR, 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 1 fractional unit each, and that's going to display them in a row of 4 because I've said, okay, I want 1 fractional unit each. Now you notice you can see my bullets now, because remember, this is an unordered list. It is a bulleted list. I don't want to see those. So I'm going to go to the rule, and I could do this in a couple places, but I guess I'll do it right here for my unordered list. In a nav, I'll just say list style none, and that will get rid of bullets. There you go. So no, I'm not going to have any more bullets in there. Perfect. So now we can see those are 4x4s. So 1 fractional unit. Now, another way of writing this, instead of writing 1FR 4 times, you can use a repeat function, 4, 1FR, and it does what it sounds like. I'm going to be repeating 4 times 1 fractional unit. We get the same thing. But what's nice about the repeat function is now it's easy for me to change my mind. I could change that 4 to a 2, and I'm going to have a 2x2 grid. Or I could change this to 1, and now it's going to be back to a 1x4, and I could change this to 8, and it's going to be whatever, but I've only got 4, so they're only taking up half of my screen. So really easy to kind of change a grid layout kind of fast and dramatically with just changing one simple value. Let's see, I'm going to put this back to 4, so we have 4 fractional units. I'm feeling pretty good about this. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to do, oh, by the way, you can still do things like justify content and stuff. So I could do justify content, space between. How's that look? Oh, that's kind of already what it looked like. What about space around? Yeah, that doesn't look any different either. I think we can do justify content there. I don't have my cheat sheet with me on Flexbox, and I didn't do this one before. So, yeah, maybe it's just because we can't see everything on there. Huh. space evenly. Okay, maybe, all right, maybe that's not doing what I would have hoped. No worries. So I'm going to take that out for now. Okay, so let's look at these list items a little bit more. So with the list items, I'm happy with those, but I really want to focus on the anchor tags inside. But what I will do with these list items is I'm going to set their heights to be, I don't know, 60 pixels? How's that going to look? Oh, good. Nice and big and chunky. I can handle that. Perfect. Now, I want to style the anchor tags within my list items. So, in fact, I'm going to get rid of the border on my list items. And now I'm going to create a rule, header, nav, list item, anchor. So the anchors are within the list items. And I'm going to give them a border. Border, 1 pixel solid. And let's do Rebecca purple. There we go. So now you can see the borders on those little anchor tags. However, I'm going to make my anchor tags display like block elements. Now once I do that, they stretch out again because that's what block elements do within the list item. And I'm going to make sure their width is set to 100%, which it already is. And I'm also going to set their height to 100%. There we go. So now these anchor tags are going to be really big right up there at the top. Okay, feeling pretty good about that. And let's see, what else do I want to do? I'm going to do text align center, a horizontal center, line height, and I'll do, what am I doing? 60 pixels, because that's the height of the list item, which is also the height of the anchor therefore. And I'm going to do text decoration none to get rid of the underlining. And I'll make my font size bigger. How about 24 points? How's that going to look? Oh, that looks kind of big, actually. Maybe I'll change it down to 20 points. Okay, I'm feeling pretty good about that. And, I feel all right about this. Now, I could put margin on these too. If I did a margin of 8 pixels, that's going to create space around the anchors, but it's inside of the list items. And that actually kind of creates a chopped off effect. So I don't know if I want to do that. So I will change my mind about that. However, instead of, if I want to create more space around this, I can say, you know what, let's go back up to my unordered list. And what if I put padding of 8 pixels on the unordered list? Now that creates some interesting space around there. I kind of like that. So what if I do padding 16 pixels top and bottom, 8 pixels left and right? Yeah, I think I'm going to be happy with that. So now I can still click on any of these nav menu items, like grid, I'll scroll to my grid, flexbox, scroll to that, table, scroll there, home, scroll all the way back up there. So everything's kind of coming together the way I would want, the way I would expect. So I'm liking that. I think I'm going to jump back up to my, let's do a quick hover effect on this too. So header nav list item a : hover, background color, and I'll just do hashtag FF9. There we go. Just change that color a little bit. And I don't think I've done active in a while, so header nav list item a : active, background color, hashtag, how about FFB? Should be a, no, that's a lighter yellow. I want to go FF like 4 or something. That'll be brighter. Now you'll only see that extra bright yellow when I click. So it's very brief. You know, if I click and hold down the button, you'll see it a little bit longer. But just that's the color right when I'm activating that particular button. But that's kind of cool. I like that. All right. I feel pretty good about all of this stuff. So let's see. What am I going to do next? Oh, that's right. I'm going to go back up to that H1. Now, I don't think I already have a rule for the H1, and I won't do too much to this, but I'll say my header H1, text align center, margin 8 pixels, there we go, font weight normal, and I'm going to reduce that color a little bit. I'll say color, what about something like CCC? Is that too light? It is pretty light, so I don't have good contrast there, which is something I'd like to avoid. What if I did something like 555? There we go. Still pretty good contrast, but just not quite as harsh. And not my typical 222, but that's pretty good there. All right, and I think I'm going to go to the header and give that a bottom border. Or do I want that? No, I do not. I do not want to put a bottom border on the header. However, I'm going to change the background color of my header back to EEC, which is the same color as the body of the page. So now we've got this. Let's see. You know what? I think... Now, let me get rid of that red border. That red border is kind of distracting to me. So that's with my article. Don't need that red border. I just want to make sure things look well. So if I go to grid, I just want to make sure my heading 2s aren't too close to the navigation menu. Yeah, I think this is a much better way to go. Perfect. Okay, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go ahead and pause the recorder, and I'm going to put an unordered list. You know what? I'm not going to pause the recorder and do that. I'm just going to keep going. Obviously, I'm just going to write some directions on here, but I am going to use an unordered list and do a little bit of styling with it, just so we're clear on what our objective is for this and also what the extra credit portion is. So far, we haven't done the extra credit portion. You're going to do most of that on your own. What we're doing together is this overall web page layout with this navigation menu, which looks like we're about done with, and then we're going to do the grid layout together, and then you're going to do the flex box and table on your own. So let me jump over to the HTML, and I am going to go to the welcome section, and I'm going to say a little paragraph here. For today's activity, work along with me as we, colon, and then after the paragraph, I'm going to do an unordered list with a list item as we create a one-page website. Okay, we're definitely going to do that, but what else are we going to do? We're going to, let's see, create a nav menu using an unordered list and grid layout. Yep, we've done that. We're taking care of that. And then we're also going to create a calculator mockup using CSS grid. We will do that together. And there we go. All right, so after this unordered list, then I'm going to do another paragraph for extra credit, and this will be, oops, oh, it's my caps lock, for 10 points. I didn't mean to do that though. For 10 points, create, okay, and after that paragraph, I'm going to have an unordered list item. So what are you going to do for the extra credit? Here's what you're going to do. You're going to create the same calculator mockup, but using CSS flexbox. Now I'll just say flexbox, period. Okay, you're going to do that. And then you're also going to create the same calculator mockup, mock-up, but using I'll just say a web table. A web table. And of course, what is a web table? That's our, our basically our table, tr, td, etc. kind of tags. All right, now I want to give you a hint about something that's going to make the table version a little bit easier. It won't make as much sense now, but I want to incorporate that. So I'm going to put an unordered list within this list item. So this is a nested list. It's going to really come in handy when we're doing our drop-down navigation menu next week. So I'm still inside of this last list item. My insertion point is just before the closing list item tag. I'm going to press my enter key, and I'm going to do another unordered list in here with another list item, and I'm going to say hint. When creating the web table, the call span attribute will make life a little, actually a lot easier. A lot easier. Ooh, I've got another tip, another hint. This is a bonus hint. When planning out your web table, count how many cells are in each row before you construct the HTML table. All right, there we go. So that is that. So I've got this text up here, but I want to do some styling. You can see because of my reset rule, it is kind of all scrunched up together and everything's lined up and things like that. But I want to enhance this a little bit, make it a little bit easier to read and stuff. So let's see, I'll head over to my CSS. Do I already have a rule? I don't have a rule for the H2s yet. So those are in my articles. So I'll go ahead and do all of this. Article, I don't know what letters I'm typing. Article H2. So my H2s, I am going to font weight normal, background color Rebecca purple, foreground color EEE. I don't know how that's going to look. Actually, yeah, that looks okay to me. I'll put a little bit of padding on there, 4 pixels. I'm feeling good about that. And I'm going to do a margin. You know, I just need margin bottom, I think. I'll do margin bottom, 16 pixels, get a little space under those. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. You would do centering? I don't know, we're centering a lot of stuff, but what the hell? Text align center? How's that look? Looks pretty good. What about text align right? Yeah, I'll do text align right. Pretty happy with that. But I will change the padding. Let's see, top, right, bottom, left. So that way there's a little bit more padding on the right side. So there we go. You know what? I'm also going to do text transform uppercase. Let's do all uppercase letters for the H2s to contrast with my all lowercase letters that I've done up here and stuff like that. Okay. Pretty happy with that. Now I want to style that unordered list. So within my article, I've got an unordered list. And actually, within my article completely, I do want to do this, I think. Or do I? No, I don't. Within my article, I've got paragraphs and actually, I'm not going to say article. I'm just going to say paragraphs. And see, my only confusion here is because I'm using an unordered list for my nav menu, and I don't want to confuse that. So I'm going to go back to this. Article, paragraph, comma, article, unordered list. And I'm going to do a line height of 1.8. I'm going to create some line spacing there. Ah, there we go. That looks a little better. And I'll go ahead and do a font size. I'm not doing root M's today, so I'll just do 1.2 M's. Make those a little bit bigger. And that didn't affect everything, interestingly enough. However, that could be an issue the way I've got this structured. So yeah, things are steadily bigger. Now, this is a problem of using M's versus Rems. So I don't think I'll use M's here. Instead, I'll do something like 14 point, and that'll kind of set everything equal. There we go. Let's do that for now. I did actually create a video recently explaining the problem of using M's and why we should use Rems, but I did that for the 295 class, not the 195 class. So I'll try to make a note to share that with you so you got that information. Okay, I think we're pretty good, but I don't like this alignment. So let's see. I'm going to go to just article and then child unordered list. And no, I can do all of them. I'll do all the unordered lists because I've got a nested unordered list. And I'm going to do a margin left of 32 pixels. And that should indent those unordered lists. And it's also going to indent the sub unordered list an appropriate amount. So yeah, I think that's a good way to go. So now I've got those bullets on there and everything's pretty sufficient. So, okay, so in this pre-recorded class, we've spent about 40 minutes or so based on my little timer up here, and we haven't got to our true layout yet, and that's going to be our grid. So our plan of action is to make a calculator layout. In fact, here's a picture of it. You're not going to be able to see it too well, but yeah, it's just going to be a basic non-functioning calculator interface. So let's go ahead and get to it. And so basically people will be able to click on these items and get to our various examples, and let's go and do the grid one together. So I'm going to jump over to the HTML, and this is our example grid. Get some room to work here. Now, we're definitely using CSS grid for this example, so we need to have a parent for all of the elements of the calculator interface. And that parent is going to be the grid parent. However, we can do it this way. I can just do a div class calculator. There we go. And we're going to be able to distinguish between this calculator and other calculators. Now, of course, the table one probably isn't going to be using a div. You're probably going to be using a table tag for that. But if you want to reuse like this HTML for the Flexbox version, you probably could quite easily. So you might go that route. However, the class calculator is going to be uniquely styled because it's within the example grid. So when we do our CSS, we'll be able to distinguish between the calculator in the grid example versus, let's say, a calculator in the Flex example. Now, since I've done this a couple of times, I already know there are going to be 21 parts within this grid calculator here. So I'm just going to do div times 21. There we go. So now I've got all of these divs in there. Let's see how they look for now. Actually, I take that back. Let's go ahead and put in some content. Now, like I said, I've already done this before, so let me check out my notes real quick because there's a lot of individual things we're going to put in here. And where is it? Where is it? Where is it? There it is. Perfect. Okay. So for instance, I'm going to do the classes first, I think. So in this first box, I'm going to put class equals formula. And I tested this out on the calculator on my tablet. And so basically this is where the formula would display that you're entering. So for instance, what did I have? I just, as a test, I did 9,000 divided by 12, and that's what it displayed. Actually, it used a division symbol, but we'll just do the slash up there for now. So that would be in that part, and we'll see it show up right in here. I'm going to jump over to my CSS. Example grid dot calculator, and this is going to be display grid. Okay, I'm just going to pause with that for a moment. Now this is kind of annoying. This just kind of keeps going back to my home page because that's what VS Code is doing, but I can always click on grid to kind of see how that's changed. If it's noticeable, it's not. So I'll be doing that a lot. So there's display grid. Great. Can't really see much that's going on. I will go ahead and put in a gap of 8 pixels again, but then I'm going to do hashtag example grid dot calculator child divs. These are the grid items here, and let's go ahead and put a border on these. 1 pixel solid Rebecca purple. Oops, that's not what I wanted. There it is. And so now we'll see all of these starting to show up. That's okay. That's the way they are going to show up at first. So I just want you to see that this is what's going to, how we're putting content into all these individual divs. And they're all going to need something different, so bear with me here. So I'm going to head back over to the HTML, and I'm going to do more of these here. We're going to work on these together. So the second one, that's going to be class equals output. And the output in question that I did, it was 750. 9,000 divided by 12, 750. There we go. So I'm focusing on the HTML for now. And the next thing, the next 2 boxes, this is where we're going to start to build the actual calculator interface here. And these are going to be numbers 7, 8, and 9. Those are at the top. And I'm going to put class equals num for these. And I'll just copy and paste that. Okay, those are 7, 8, and 9. Now after that, there's a button, just AC, for clearing out the calculator screen. Okay, now after that is an entity, ampersand hashtag 247 semicolon. And that creates the little division symbol up there, okay? So it's really tiny on my screen, but we're going to change our font pretty soon. But that's the division symbol. Now, I looked all those up. I don't have those memorized, by the way. But there's a really great website. So, for instance, I can, I do want to show it to you here. So let's see. Let me move this out of the way. And I'm just going to open up a new browser tab. HTML entities. Oh, you can actually see what I was searching for. So even though I did this at my work computer, I was using Edge, and so it remembers my search. So I was looking for the HTML entities for calculator. I don't know if that worked for me, then I changed it out to like math symbols or something. Either way, at some point you'll get to this website, Top Talent, and they have a pretty nice resource on here. So you can see all the various symbols that you might want, and then they give you the code, and the code I'm using is the HTML code. So I just went to this website, and when I wanted a division symbol, I said, all right, well, what is it? All right, ampersand hashtag 247 semicolon, got it. And if I want some other symbols, I put those on there. So I just, you don't have to have all the stuff memorized. You just need to know that there's ways to do it, and there's resources that are going to help you get that stuff accomplished. So let's go back to our page. There it is. And let's see, I'm going to put my little, you can't see this, my little recorder interface. I'm going to move that back over there. There we go. Okay, so we got that division symbol. Okay, now after that division symbol, I've got the numbers 4, 5, and 6. And like before, these are all going to be class equals num. Now I'm giving these classes so that we can uniquely style them. So for instance, the formula and the output divs, those need to look quite a bit different than the others. All the numbers, I want them to have a different background color and stuff like that. So it just allows us to style the different parts of the calculator interface. And let's see, so after 4, 5, 6, I've got a ampersand hashtag 177 semicolon, and that's going to create the little plus minus one. I was looking for a symbol that would do the plus slash minus, like positive negative on calculators, and I didn't look around for very long, but I didn't see one, so that was as close as I could get with that. But you'll see it much more clearly once I amplify these fonts. Okay, and then right after that one, it was ampersand hashtag 215, ampersand hashtag 215 semicolon. That creates the multiplication symbol. And then we had the numbers 1, 2, and 3. And of course, these were all class equals number. Now, for some of these math symbols, by the way, I did do, like for 247, I did do class equals math just for a math symbol because I wanted to be able to style those in a different color as well. And I did the same thing for the 215, but not the 177. And then let's see, after 1, 2, 3, we've got a ampersand hashtag 37 semicolon, and that creates a percent sign. That one doesn't get a math number on it. And then right after that one, I do have a class equals math, and this is going to be ampersand hashtag 8722 semicolon. Okay, that creates the minus sign. And then after that, we have a 0. And this one gets two differences. This is going to be class equals num space 0. So I'm giving it two classes, by the way. So the 0 button is going to be wider than the other number buttons, but I want it to share some characteristics with the num group, the num class, but it's also going to have some unique 0 class elements. So that's how you give two classes to an element, and this is a very practical demonstration of why you'd want to give two classes to the same element. Okay, and then after that we have three entities: ampersand, hashtag 8729 semicolon, ampersand, hashtag 61 semicolon, ampersand, hashtag 43 semicolon. There we go, we're getting all those symbols in there. And then this one is class equals num. Okay, that's the period, so that's going to be styled like a number key. And then we had class equals math. And then the last one is also class equals math. I think I've got them all down. If I made any typos, it'll really start to stand out once we start to see this calculator come to shape. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and get to it here. I'm going to head back over to my CSS, and the first thing I will do is I'm going to take all of these divs and I'm going to set their height. I can be very specific with this because these don't need to expand and contract, but I'm going to do kind of tall ones, 80 pixels. And we can't see them right now, but if I go back to the grid, there we go. So now we can really see them. And remember, this calculator is a display grid, so it's a grid parent. And don't forget, when I do display grid, it makes this a grid parent. There we go. Now let's go ahead and set up the structure for this grid. And I'm going to write grid template columns. I'm going to do a repeat 5 times 1 fractional unit. That's going to give me a grid pattern that's 5 across. That's actually what we want. Most of the rows in our calculator interface are going to be 5 buttons going across. However, the first 2 buttons are going to go all the way across. So here's how we can write that. Example grid ID hashtag example grid dot calculator space, and I think it's dot, I can't remember, it's formula output, it doesn't really matter, we're doing them both, formula, comma, hashtag x grid dot calculator, gosh, how can I spell this, dot output, I can't remember what I wrote, so let me jump back over to the HTML real quick. And I'm looking at these first two. Yeah, formula and output. Formula and output. There we go. Got them. Perfect. And I want these to be styled the same way. Now, we did this in class very briefly the other day. I want to do a grid column start at some number. And I want a grid column end at some number. So when you're looking at his layout, the way you read this, for instance, I want both of these cells to stretch all the way across the width of the calculator. So I start, the very far left is going to be 1. And then in between these cells here, that's 2. Then it's 3. Then it's 4. Then it's 5. And the right side of the 5th cell is 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I want these cells to start with a 1 and end at 6. And that's going to make them stretch all the way across like that. And now you're starting to see, this calculator is starting to come together, right? So now, instead of writing grid column start 1, grid column end 6, that's kind of long, we can do it this way. You can do grid column 1/6, and that's going to give us the exact same look for those particular cells. So grid column is shorthand, and the starting position / the ending position. There we go. Now, very similar, that 0. I want that 0 to be double wide. Do you know what the start and the stop is going to be for the 0? I want it to span 2 spaces here. So what's it going to be? Starts with a 1. What's it going to end with? You know what? I'm just going to copy this real quick. Actually, I'll copy this bottom one. Part, paste, and this is my dot 0. It's going to start with a 1 and end with a 3. So now that 0 button is going to stretch across. And that is the basic structure of our calculator interface. Now, the only things remaining to do to this grid layout is really just some aesthetics. I want to get these numbers, I want to get the contents looking bigger and chunkier and being in the middle and stuff like that. So I want to put that stuff right in there. You know, I'm going to take that division symbol. This doesn't really matter, just the look, the slash. So where's that division symbol at? It is right after the AC. There it is. Hashtag 247. I'm going to copy that and I'm going to stick it right here. So now I'll have a little division symbol displaying my formula. Okay, let's do some styling. Great. So we've got these divs. Let's go ahead and do text align center, line height 80 pixels, font size 16 points. How's that look? Yeah, it's looking pretty good. We can go a little bit bigger. What about, is 20 points too big? No, I think that looks fine. Now I do like the center placement for most of these. However, I want my output and my formulas to be over towards the right. So let's see. Now this could be interesting because I'll be doing this a little bit earlier up here. Let's see what happens if I do text align right. Okay, did that take? Oh, it did take. Okay. I was wondering if it was going to be contradicted by these, but I think since my selectors are are different, that's why it didn't create a conflict and they didn't recenter themselves. So I think we're good there, but they're too close to the far right edge. So let me go ahead and also do a padding right of maybe 8 pixels. Let's see how that's looking. I think that looks perfectly fine. Now, the output though, that 750 on my calculator when I was doing this, it was bigger and more noticeable. So I am going to, come on, I wish I wouldn't do that. I'll select this way. I'm going to copy this. I want to make a rule just for the output, and I want to do something like font weight bold and font size 22 points. And yeah, because I want that output to be bigger than the other stuff. Maybe I'll do 24 points. I don't know if that's... Yeah, there we go. That looks pretty good. All right. We're doing great. Now I just want to style some of these things a little bit differently. Like, for instance, my numbers. I don't have a rule for those yet. So I'll just go ahead and write example grid dot calculator dot num background color hashtag CCC, just so we can see them look different. There we go. So we can give them that kind of that gray background color. And maybe I'll go a little bit lighter, DDD. We'll still see that they're different. Yeah, there we go. And then the other one I want to do is I want to style those math symbols. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this one and paste math, and we'll make these a little bit darker. How about 999? A little too dark maybe. How about BBD? Yeah, a little darker, but they can easily be distinguished. Now, I didn't give a rule or a class, to these other buttons here, as long as they look different. It might be nice if these up here at the top are styled differently. Maybe we'll go dark versus light on those. So what if we go to our formula and output, background color, hashtag 222, and a foreground color of FF. EEC. See how that looks? Oh yeah, that looks fine to me. All right. I think we're actually at a conclusion for this. So I think our grid layout is looking pretty sharp, if I do say so myself. Now, we've done this work together. So you should have a page that looks very similar to mine. Maybe you've got different colors and a slightly different look and different names, but that's okay. What we're going for here, what we've done together, again, remember on our home page, these are the rules. We created a one-page website. There we go. We created a nav menu using an unordered list and grid layout. That's what we've got right up there at the very top. And we've created a calculator mockup using CSS grid. And sure enough, there it is. There's our grid table layout using CSS grid. Super. So that part we did together. Now, if you want to continue working on this, that's up to you. If you do continue working on this, I will throw a few points your way. So basically, create the same calculator mockup but using CSS Flexbox. Now, the Flexbox layout, which will be here, of course, will be very similar to the grid layout, right? So I expect there's probably going to be a fair amount of copying and pasting going on when you do the grid. I'm perfectly cool with that because that's what's nice about grid and Flexbox. They share a lot of overlap in the HTML. I can't imagine what there could be anything different in the HTML for the Flexbox version of this calculator mockup. And even the CSS will be very, very similar. Now, you've done Flexbox a few times on your own, so obviously we would be doing, display flex. Remember, we had a different example. Display flex to make it a flex parent. Gap still works. Now, of course, with Flexbox, we don't use things like grid template columns and stuff like that. So that's where there's going to be a few differences. Like, how do you get these first two cells to be really wide and stretch all the way across and that kind of stuff? I bet you can figure it out, though, because you will end up having the CSS for that formula and the output one. You'll just, instead of doing grid column, you'll be doing something else, right? So there. Now the table one is not necessarily harder, but it is going to require a little bit more modification, because when you're working on the HTML for a table, you're not going to be using divs and divs like that. You're going to be using table tags and TR tags and TD tags. But remember what I suggested in the hints on here. When you're working on the table, especially the bonus hint, when planning out your web table, count how many cells are in each row before you construct the table. So if you're looking at your plan of action, how many rows does this table have? It's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows, 6 sets of TR tags. How many cells are in the first row? There's 1. How many cells are in the second row? There's 2. How many cells are in the 6th row? How many cells are in the 4th row? And if you can answer those questions, that's going to help you determine how many sets of TD tags you need in those individual rows. And of course, once you've got that determined, don't forget my other hint on here, the call span attribute. The call span attribute will help you out immensely for those. Okay, I think that is it. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this video, process this recording, get it uploaded, and share it with you. It is now 10:30 in the a.m. on Thursday. I should have no problem getting this to you. Ooh, might be a little tight. Sometimes it takes a while to process these videos, but I'll certainly get it to you by 12:30, which will be in time for class time. Remember, we're not meeting in person for class or via remote, but I'll want you to reference this video and use it as kind of a pre-recorded class session. Now, what if you have some follow-up questions that I didn't quite address? Don't worry, you can email those to me for sure. You could also post the questions in Teams. I meant to encourage us to use Teams more often than I did, but yeah, you can email me questions and I can respond that way and make sure everybody knows. And then on next week, on Thanksgiving week, on that Tuesday, we will do some stuff together there. Some official, some mostly unofficial, though, doing drop-down nav menu. So thanks for participating, and I hope to see how you did on your on your calculator mockups. Take care.